he decided he wanted to see the Poseidon Adventure, the Tender Edge fate. And we said, well, it's an adult movie. He said, I don't care, I want to see it. Somehow you were intrigued by the newspaper ads or something that you'd seen, so we said, well, okay. And off you went. It scared you to death.
Well, that poster apparently started all this, really. Paul wanted to see the movie. Didn't really realize what it was about, other than it had to do with a ship at sea. And when he saw that poster, saw the obvious party-type atmosphere, but oddly inverted, and people running and screaming and water pouring in, that apparently made a very deep impression, and kind of at the root of all the Poseidon parties. Fortunately, we never got to actual water, at least inside the house. But other than that,
we know of.
That we know of, yes, there is that.
Original book, first book, that at Paul's insistence, we bought him when he was still a small boy, and we were on our way to a vacation trip. He spotted it in the gift shop and insisted that he had to have it. He read it, and as I said, hoping not that he wouldn't understand half the language and so forth. But that started it, and he read on and read on.
Someone once said to me, Paul, obsession suits you. And in the case of the 1972 film, The Poseidon Adventure, that couldn't be more true. My name is Paul Wilson, and what follows is sort of a documentary about my obsession with this 30-year-old film, as well as my years-in-the-making video satire of same. What am I thinking? None of you remember the Poseidon Adventure, very few of you anyway. That movie's 30 years old. Heck, the 1990s was about that film about the real ship, with those two love-struck Y2K teenagers somehow thrust into 1912. Well, we'll have none of that. Poseidon Adventure was purely fiction. Let's look at an old, faded trailer from the real film.
What is it, Lookout?
I never saw anything like it. An enormous wall of water coming towards us.
In the early morning hours of New Year's Eve, Gene Hackman, Ernest Borgnine, Red Buttons, Carol Lindley, Roddy McDowell, Stella Stevens, Shelley Winters, Jack Albertson, Pamela Sue Martin, Arthur O'Connell, Eric Shea, and Leslie Nielsen were aboard the SS Poseidon when it was hit by a 90-foot tidal wave.
Oh, my God.
And capsized. The Poseidon Adventure. The most exciting escape adventure of our time.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so now that you remember who was in it, let's look at another faded trailer that shows some of that wonderful capsizing sequence.
At midnight on New Year's Eve, the luxury liner SS Poseidon, en route from New York to Athens, is hit by a 90-foot tidal wave.
Oh, my God.
And capsized. Of the 1,400 people on board, only 6 will survive.
Okay, that guy falling through the light. It's kind of a signature shot. Probably a lot of you recognize that anyway, and that is what I saw on television as a very impressionable 7-, 8-year-old back in 1972. And I begged my parents to take me to this movie. I'd had a steady diet of Disney films prior to that, and I didn't even really know what it was about. I just loved that chaos.
All I really remember was seeing Shelley Winters grabbing onto something and screaming.
After having seen Airport on TV, I think I thought it was an airplane disaster film. It wasn't as though I hadn't been familiar with ship disasters. As a youngster, I had been absolutely spellbound by Night to Remember. And I'd even seen a couple of the Titanic movies on late-night TV, but I was still seeing 101 Dalmatians in the theaters. So I looked at those newspaper ads lovingly, trying to figure out what was going on in that picture. Looking at the people, stars that I didn't recognize, just begging my parents to take me to the Poseidon Adventure. And finally, one Saturday afternoon, they came home from their shopping and they took me out that evening. And when I first saw the poster, I was scandalized. Look at this. First of all, it had a dirty word on it. That shocked me. And then there were those ladies falling with their dresses going up. I thought, oh my. And then I saw balloons and party streamers and a Happy New Year sign, and then all that water crashing in and all those panicking people, and I got scared. I got really scared. I knew I was in for something. I was scared of the ship plowing through the water. I was scared of the opening music and titles. I had to say I didn't understand a lot of the language or the so-called adult situations. It was just as confusing as the paperback at the time. I was bored by the minister. I didn't understand his sermon sequence. I did relate to the little kid, though. He was only 2 years older than I was, after all. Then there was that sweet, grandmotherly Shelley Winters. And that pretty lady, the one who sang The Morning After. It was nice, it was calm, there was no storm. Then night fell, and I got scared again. There was that strange couple. They argued, and they yelled, and my parents didn't do that. They used bad language, and she had on that strange blue thing, and even as a kid I thought, look at her bosoms. Look at her bosoms. They look like grapefruits suspended in pantyhose. Then there was that beautiful party sequence. It was so colorful. It all appealed to me. It was just dazzling on the big screen. The women in their gowns, their dangling earrings, everything sparkled. It was all just so happy. And of course it was New Year's. It was a big party like I'd never seen as a kid. Confetti and streamers. I thought, what could possibly go wrong? Well, then the big wave came. When they started the alarms, I think my little fists clenched the arms of the theater seat. I was simultaneously fascinated and horrified by the idea of gaiety shifting to chaos. It had been a big, beautiful party, and now it was literally falling apart. The ladies in their gowns were falling over tables, and dishes were sliding, and everybody was screaming, and it was just utter chaos. I do recall really loving it when the piano crashed down. That appealed to my sense of destruction as a child. Then there was those people hanging, Anonymous dropping, the clown lady falling. And then, just like in the commercial, that man that fell in the light, whom I've since met, by the way. But back then, I hated seeing him dead with his eyes open. I didn't like any bodies with their eyes open. I hadn't seen anything like that. I was glad there were survivors, but it was so dark, and I was scandalized again when Pamela Sue Martin took off her skirt. I thought, what kind of a movie is this anyway? And the Christmas tree, a Christmas tree which is usually an object of gaiety, and it was their only means of escape. I think I probably shit myself when the movie poster was realized, as far as seeing the water crash in on all the helpless people. I kept my eyes closed through most of it, and I had nightmares. The worst thing was the kitchen, when Pamela Sue Martin sees the dead chef, and the Reverend tosses his jacket over it. Another dead body, with its eyes open, and burned yet. Ugh. Awful. Not only had I seen the poster, realized I had seen things no child at that age should have seen in 1972. And think about the things that kids see today in movies and television. But I think the images that stuck with me the worst that night and for several weeks afterwards were the dead chef in the kitchen, who sort of resembled Buddy Ebsen to me. That scene of the water crashing in that looked exactly like the poster. And for some reason, those big